Hi,
Hi.
my name is Nancy Levens. I'm on the board. I'm also president of the board. So it's a pleasure to meet you both.
Yes.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
I'm Eliot, and
I'm Emily.
yeah.
I'm Emily Dobbs. I'm a graduate of UNCC, summa cum laude, 4.0. Very proud of that. And I love cats and art and architecture, and integrating art and architecture. Something that we've talked about in this interview. And I'm always looking to push the boundary of like the norm, trying to go against the norm. And I'm influenced a lot by different artists, and I read a lot. I kind of broaden my viewpoint by getting other people's perspectives in the literary sense, and also the visual aspects. Yeah, that's.
I'm Eliot Ball. I'm also a graduate of UNC Charlotte. I'm not sure what cum laude I am. One of them.
It's let's see, you are magna cum laude.
Magna cum laude.
Yeah.
One
of them.
But yeah, I am an artist and a designer. I am training to become an architect. I'm in the process of taking my licensure exams. And so I'm kind of on a track right now of kind of combining those two things more in a kind of in the professional world.
What made you select this project for the awards?
You want to start? Or I think it was.
So our professor emailed us actually, and she was like, "Hey, there's this awards competition. I think that you should submit your project." And she was actually runner-up she was honorary. I think it was for the On the Ceiling project.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, and our students.
Yeah, she was a professor for that semester, and yeah, she suggested it to us, and we were both really interested since we really love this project, and we worked hard on it. And
I think we also intended, when we were making the project, we intended to submit it somewhere or like do something with it outside of just the school, and this just kind of came about and happened kind of naturally.
What was the first project you felt and individually felt represented you as an architect?
I don't know. I think in this category, I think we're still kind of like I don't know, designers and not architects yet.
Okay, so here it says artist, designer, or architect, and I picked architect by virtue of your education, but please clarify that. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I consider us both artists. We've always kind of been really interested in art and art history. You can see on our wall, our house is just filled with art from other artists and our own art. This is a Hermanius Bosch painting from like the 1500s.
Familiar.
Actually included in our own drawings. There are some snippets of the figures in this painting, and so we included some of those figures in our own drawings. Because of the kind of like dynamic quality of those figures. We were really interested in like the human form and how to make this building, relate to us as humans. And I don't think that answered the question.
It's kind of going through my own personal questions after looking at your project anyway. So put a pin in that, because
the art
piece really resonated for me in your work. Definitely.
Yeah.
So Eliot, how about for you? What's the first project that made you feel as though you were represented as an artist, designer, or architect?
I think this one really like
Yeah.
I don't think we have done something in our lives yet at this kind of this scale as far as like the recognition we've gotten or even like the potential for recognition.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what we do is kind of like just kind of personal work and not really any kind of publicized stuff. And so
Yeah.
this is the really kind of the first thing that really is kind of cementing us as award-winning designers, I
Yeah.
guess.
And going back to like, and going back to personal work, this was a really like we put ourselves into the project.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, from the beginning, we were sketching and we were like, what if this? And like, oh, what if, we did this crazy thing? And we kept that up with the rest of the project or, going through the whole semester. And which was really cool, because I feel like for some projects, it's like we have these crazy ideas and then we turn it into a building and then, we go through code and, like what would it actually be like in the real life? And with this, we
never
just
said
like,
no. We just
yeah.
kept.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things we keep telling people about this project is that like we kept just being like, oh, what if we did that? That'd be crazy. And then we were like, all right, we're doing that
It's
now.
in the project. I
Yeah.
get that's,
Yeah.
like, what if we force people to crawl through this tiny little space and, like have all these crazy aspects. And, that's us. Like we're crazy. We,
Well, I mean,
I'm sure
even if you say you didn't kind of ultimately marry it to code or kind of constraints of kind of the design and construction process, there was a lot of resolution,
yeah.
right? And what I mean, to me, it's like you guys thought about, there was nothing arbitrary or unresolved,
Mhm.
Right.
at least that I saw.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And that's something that we definitely, oh, sorry.
uh,
That's something that we definitely struggled with is, how does this all come together, spatially and conceptually, and like in the middle of the semester, we had all these ideas and all these sort of like separate pieces, and we looked over at our classmates and they already had buildings, and that was something that we,
Yeah, it took
struggled
it. I
with.
think it takes a lot of work to, especially a building at this like size and like to design down to the detail level and the like human scale
Yeah.
at every moment, and I think that's what we undertook. We were like, okay, well, we're going to design this building, yeah,
Mhm.
and we're going to design it down to every single second and every single interaction that someone may have with the building. It's going to be designed and it's going to be a decision that we've made.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think I'm quite proud of that
Yeah.
that aspect of this project.
well, and I love the way that you have kind of you have the origin described about particles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of,
Looking at-
wow, it's not that often that you really kind of conceptually are privileged to know kind of where the process began
Mhm.
for designers or architects. So here it was like, okay, I like it. Now I see kind of what your thought process was. And
Yeah. Yeah, it was really about the process of like how this thing evolved, from choosing the octopus as this sort of fun animal that we could manipulate in space, and then how that evolved with like how it interacted with people, and then getting into the ethics of it towards the end, which is really interesting, which is why we included the entire thing.
these are, this is an observation. But Emily, looking at your portfolio, right, that's online, right, issue?
Yes, it is. Oh, so that is my second year portfolio.
Well, I would say it was, the artistry in it is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I almost felt like looking at it because it was very, I already said this before about this project, but it was very emotional, the way you both kind of shaped space and how you conveyed it, your graphics. And I thought, God, she's almost like an artist whose medium is architecture.
Yeah.
And then you started talking about all the artwork that you surround yourself with. You certainly can see now in talking to you, especially kind of how that all kind of is integrated.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing that out there. It was really some beautiful work in there.
Yeah, I've always.
Did you know that was out there?
I did, but I didn't know that you guys.
I just Googled, I was like, okay, let's see what's up here. So, and I found that.
I've been, that's one of my goals, is to put my art out there, because there's always been the struggle between wanting to be an artist and then, wanting to survive in a capitalistic society.
Yeah.
And, out of high school, architecture was sort of that perfect in between of being able to express myself creatively while learning these real world applications, and learning about design and composition and color, and yeah, that was something that was so great about this project, was that we were able to include all of that. Like, we were able to make this art, rather than more art than architecture, but also it was still spatial. It was, our medium was space. And even with that portfolio, I was designing the space on the paper, on the page. And
does that have your like cube project on there with the graffiti?
No, it doesn't. See, that was third year.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that was first and second year.
Wow.
And
it's like a boathouse project or something like that.
Yeah. That was third year, first semester. So it was like halfway between, beginning architecture school and where I am now. And
so it's interesting though. I mean, you have this kind of pull toward artistry, and you went to architecture school, which is it's interesting that if you wanted to be practical, that you were still drawn to something like architecture, which is volume, as opposed to something two-dimensional like graphics or something like that. Just a thought. Architecture is challenging. Not everybody's brain thinks in 3 dimensions, and so it's interesting.
Yeah, and even throughout architecture school, I would always start out in the 2-dimensional world, and something that I struggled with was bringing that into 3D. Like, how do I space, and but just like pulling from my environment, like looking at what already exists, which is something that's really cool about architecture, is that it's everywhere. It's in the neighborhoods, it's in the cities, and you can go and I drive around and I look at how the buildings are built, and like kind of how people interact with that, and like how it defines our space and like the world that we live in. But yeah, kind of taking that and then putting it into art and like putting it onto a page. And
well, so if there was any doubt, at least in my observation, the artistry and how to express yourself is prominent, which is good. It distinguishes you.
Mm-hmm.
A good way, I think. And then Eliot, are you working at Perkins Eastwood?
Yeah, I am.
How do you like it?
Yeah, I like it pretty good. I am currently working there as like a intern between, I just graduated, or we both just graduated from our undergraduate.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and so I'm taking, I'm kind of in an interim year between when I go into my master's, and so I'm working at Perkins Eastman. But yeah, it's fun. I'm getting to work on a lot of kind of different projects. Yeah.
How are you finding I mean, there's always that conversation about how the academic exploration of architecture and the connection between the practice of architecture. So how are you finding that intersection?
Yeah, I think it is it's almost entirely different. And really they don't teach you much about the professional practice in the kind of academic world. It's more about, or at least at UNC Charlotte, it was more about just a design thinking and like developing that just kind of understanding of how to develop space and how to develop like a kind of feeling and those kind of things. But then as you get into professional practice, it's like, how does this work? And like,
How is this actually going to be built?
yeah. And
Yeah.
also, but also like
Yeah.
relationships with people and stuff like that.
Yeah, you have to work with contractors
Yeah.
and engineers and
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think one
So,
of the great things that I've found is that everyone that goes to architecture school still has that love for design. And at least at Perkins Eastman, we have like a kind of a group that I've kind of undertaken where we have like little design competitions and like to kind of still have that kind of academic conversation about design and how to integrate that into the process and because a lot of that design thinking and a lot of that design work happens at like a higher level, and then gets passed down to like, the interns, and then like they don't really get to see that conversation. But I think like integrating that whole process is kind of what we've started to do at Perkins Eastman, at least. Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, it can be kind of a jolt.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely.
It can, but it sounds like they're doing their part to help people kind of navigate that transition.
Yeah.
I give them a lot of credit for that. Just an observation. I really love the graphics. I love the hand sketches, the hand. And I don't know, this is really a stupid thing to say. I don't know if it's generational, but I love seeing the juxtaposition of hand expression in design juxtaposed to the, a final product. And I don't know if it's because I struggle if I look at something that is sometimes renderings that are only digital, to me, I struggle sometimes to really differentiate or kind of, it doesn't jump out at me the way the communication in a hand sketched kind of detail or something does. And I was really so happy to see that in your work. And is that something that is kind of universal with you and your colleagues, or is that kind of explicit to you both? Or
I'd say it's pretty explicit to us.
Yeah,
as
we
far as
stayed on the page. Like we didn't go digital for most of the semester. We stayed just sketching and doing those sections and doing these
and
drawings.
exploring really.
Yeah. Which I think was why we struggled so much with like the 3D aspect, because once we moved into like the 3D modeling, it's like, how do we capture the same essence of the sketches into this like 3-dimensional model?
Yeah.
right.
But I think I want to pinpoint on that. Like I love that the sketches really that you saw like the personality in those, and I think we put a lot of our kind of, like Emily was saying earlier, is like we put a lot of ourselves into this project, and I think especially in those sections, we bring our personality to those sections, and I think that's one thing we really dislike about like those like just like over rendered, I feel like projects that feel almost like sterile because of the amount of realism in the like rendering, and where it is it is a honed skill. We try to get that same personality in the digital as we did in the as we did in sketches.
Yeah, we have there's a lot of Easter eggs. in our drawings.
Yeah, I mean, it's so expressive. It's so evocative. Even like the line weights and the, whatever, the pencils that you used and things like that. It's just so there.
And that color,
And the colors, right? And it's,
coral red. We bought a marker at the beginning of the semester, and it's called fluorescent coral red, and it's this like vibrant, deep, like,
what's it called?
Fluorescent coral red.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we kept with it the entire semester. We had matching bow ties. That was the color. We kept it in the final drawings. It was just this like bright color that we were really drawn to. And but even in the digital drawings, we have like these, just like a bunch of Easter eggs. I said earlier, but like we have like figures from the Hermania Schbosch painting. We have people doing things that you look at and you're like, wait, that guy's hanging off the edge of the building. Like what? Or people.
And I'm very excited to go with them. Kind of those flourishes. I'm going to look at them.
We presented. So first we had review at our school where we had presented to the professors, and so there was like some distance between the people in the drawings. And then we presented at Perkins Eastman, and people were walking around and like looking up close and like seeing the figures and seeing the details that we had put in. This is crazy. Like, what? I see that. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And it's so clever. It's
and it's like these hidden things that, like, if you look,
it fosters people's like impulse to stop and look.
Mm-hmm.
And be kind of amused, or see a folly like that, and it's kind of, I appreciated that artistry and what you did, because I think kind of the value add of that kind of personal touch, I worry it gets lost.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like we were talking about, kind of more conventional, what I will call conventional renderings.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, for me, I really was like, wow, I had no idea this was just such a absolutely enchanting kind of project that way. I loved it.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers.
There's a lot of layers. Also good art.
Yeah.
Art always has a lot of layers, right?
There's that juxtaposition between like, oh my God, we're eating these like really intelligent creatures, that's like you're very uncomfortable, and then you look at the drawings and like the sun has a happy face on it, and like you're like, oh, these like really fun details that are like in direct opposition to this really like kind of morbid
brutalism that's really expressed.
So that's something that we really played with a lot.
And I think also in the drawings, like we added that element of, I think we were really thinking about the way different people would perceive the drawing. So like, as far as like, when you're, 20 feet back from it, like, what do you see? Then when you're like 5 feet away from it, what do you see? And then when you're like 6 inches away from it, like, how do you, the different levels that you can perceive the drawing was really important to us.
Yeah.
Hey, how's a 10?
And one thing, I just thought of this thing, I forgot to put it in the narrative. But we, in those sort of like fragment sections that we did, we put meat, and all the people have textured meat. And so they're like pink with like, but we put meat, and we were like, oh, like we're people, we're also meat, and the octopus are also meat. Like it's like
all right, so now I'm gonna look for that.
Yeah.
Like there's like 6x6 like small renderings that
and we have like the food advertisements, like the consumerism.
Yeah, totally. All right. Okay. Yeah, those were great. They kind of had like retro art to them, right?
Yeah.
This like this thing has been happening for a really long time. This disconnect between us and our food.
See?
So many layers. It's just like so much stuff. And like, how do we fully convey this to people? Since like this.
Wow, very subtle, but it resonates, right? I thought that was deliberate. I wasn't in the moment, I wasn't quite sure kind of conceptually,
Right.
but it definitely stood out. Like, oh, look at those kind of vintage looking advertisements and that kind of iconography.
Yeah.
What would you like to see the Architecture Design Museum be? What would you like it? What would you like it to be?
That's a hard question. I went to your museum. We took a trip to Los Angeles for 10 days. I was taking a class on like the history and like how it developed as a city. And so I actually got to see one of the exhibits. I can't remember which one it was.
That's okay.
But I think it'd be interesting to take in a lot of different disciplines, maybe like try to, I don't know, like.
Yeah, maybe there's some way you can collaborate, like
design,
dancing or like
design
singing
in dance or design in, I don't know, like book covers or like ordinary things. I don't know, trying to find like art and design and architecture in the ordinary.
Oh, I love that.
That's a good answer to the question.
That's great.
Yeah.
Like the Andy Warhol Museum.
Yeah. Like I really like sort of like found design, you know, like kind of like exploring and then like,
I love that.
you know, like coming upon something that resonates with you because you can relate with it.
That is a great. Eliot, any other thoughts other than that? Those were all like, I'm telling you.
Dwelling on that question for a little bit, I think maybe what will be interesting is I really love, and I think we included this in our project, but like architecture that is forces you to act in a certain way or forces you to respond to it. You know, I wonder if there's an exhibition or some kind of way that you can interact with the audience that is more almost aggressive, like the building is acting with them. And I think that incorporation of the story and how you know the person that is going through the museum perceives the work or perceives the building is kind of you know, explored and kind of tilted the scales there a little bit.
Yeah, that made me think of there was a Yoko Ono exhibition, or it was like a exhibition in the Maxi Museum by Zaha Hadid when I went and visited in Rome.
What was that like?
It was awesome. It was this room that was filled with blue and white paint, and you could paint on the walls yourself. And so it was like layers upon layers and layers of all of these things that everybody had added to it. All of the people who had attended the museum had added something of their own. And so it became like this conglomeration of all of the people that had been there before.
The whole archaeology.
Yeah.
That's
So that could be something cool. Like if like the people, every time you went and saw the exhibition, it was different because everybody had interacted with it and changed it in some way. Yeah, I think that's something that we're also really interested in. Is like people interacting with the building.
Yeah.
And
or just human interaction. I think like I was telling you about that project earlier. I think that was also kind of on the same vein. It's just like this idea of presence and like past presence, kind of digital presence, the
like
presence even just of your body,
leaving
and the
a
building.
footprint on the building. And that's another thing I loved about Rome was that, you know, graffiti was everywhere, and it was like there was like the history of the city, and like, you know, like, you know, that people like hundreds and thousands of years ago like built this stuff, and people now are still adding
Marking.
to it. Yeah, and like, yeah,
Wow, those are great. Those are really great concepts to think about.
yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I think at least in my experience with going to museums, I love going to museums, but the ones where it's experiential, they, for me, they kind of stay with you longer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Is it-
Yeah, 'cause you see yourself in the exhibition.
Yeah.